Welcome back again. This is Module 4 of Introduction to Project Management Principles and Practices, University of California, Irvine. And again, I'm Rob Stone. We're still in planning. We're going to talk about human resources. We've put our project together now. We've defined what the project is. We've figured out how we're going to do this project. Now we figure out who is going to do this. We have to put all the people on this project. There are two general categories of responsibilities you have as a project manager when you're working with human resource issues. One, you have to figure out what your human resource needs are. Who needs to be on the project? Who do you need to have on your project team? By the time you have the project team put together, you need to have the collective knowledge to do this project. So you need all the experts to do different parts of the project. Everyone will bring something to the project, their own expertise. Not everyone's going to be able to do the entire project. You need to get a team put together so that you can get this project done successfully. Then once you get the team put together, you have to manage and lead this team. You have to actually work effectively with these people from the beginning to the end of the project, and you have to try to get them to work effectively together as well. There are two terms that we're going to be talking about. One of them is work, and one of them is duration. You'll see work written as work. You'll see it written as effort. You'll see it written as work effort, just depending on which text you're looking at. MS Project will talk about work. PMI will talk about effort. And a number of texts that you look at will talk about work effort. All three are exactly the same thing, all the same concept. Work. It's the number of labor units required to get something done. How much work has to go in to get this done? Then we're going to look at duration. Duration is one way to figure out how long it's going to take to do this work. There are two different ways to look at how long it'll take to do the work. One is duration and one is elapsed time. First, we're going to look at duration. How long are we going to take to do this work? Let's look at an example of work and duration and how they relate to each other. Work can be equal to duration. Example 1 here, option 1. Option 2, we can have duration be more than work. Or in example 3, option 3 here, we can have work be more than duration. What does that actually mean? It means that Ted has a task to do. It's almost 8 o'clock on Monday morning. We're waiting for some information from our customer so that Ted can get to work on a task that's important on this project and needs to be done. We have to have this information before Ted can start on the task. It's almost 8 o'clock Monday morning. The phone rings. Ted's walking in the door. You answer your phone and say, hello? Oh, yes, great. Wonderful. I'll let him know and we'll get started on that right away. Catch Ted when Ted comes walking in the door and say, Ted, the customer just called. They've just emailed the information to you. You can start working on that task that we're waiting for the information for. Can you get started on that right away? Because they're going to be in here at noon on Wednesday and they need this thing done by then. We have to have it done by noon Wednesday. That gives Ted 8 hours on Monday to do this, 8 hours on Tuesday to work on this, and 4 hours on Wednesday. There's our 20 hours. 8 hours Monday, 8 hours Tuesday. We've got 16 hours worth of the work done. We do the other 4 hours on Wednesday morning. So 20 hours duration available, and we have 20 hours of work to get done. They're equal. Duration is the time that we have set aside to actually accomplish work. Now, Ted starts back down the hall and the phone rings again. Pick it up and you say, hello, yes, what? Oh, yeah, I'll let him know. Not a problem, thank you. Ted, hold on a second. The customer just called. They're not going to be here until 5 o'clock on Friday. You don't need to have this thing done till 5 o'clock Friday. Ted says, that's great. I can start on it right away this morning and I'll have it done by Friday. I've got other things to do. I can work some other work in around all of that. I will get the 20 hours worth of work done in 40 hours. There's 8 hours on Monday, 8 hours Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Each of those days has 8 hours. There's 40 hours of duration time available for Ted to do his work. He only has 20 hours worth of work to do. So in that case, duration is longer than the amount of work. Now, Ted starts back down the hall and the phone rings again and you go, oh, hi, yeah, it's nice to talk to you again. Oh, yeah, that's not a problem at all. I'll let him know and we'll get that worked out. Hang up. Ted, you got to get back here quick. We got a big problem now. All of a sudden, they're going to be in here tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. What are we going to do? Ted says, that's not a problem. There's only 20 hours worth of work to do on this. Jill just finished up a project and I said, hey, I might need some help on this project that I'm working on. Would you be available? And she said, yes, I can help you with that. I'll go let Jill know right away that we both need to start working on this morning right away at 8 o'clock. Ted and Jill both work on this task for 8 hours on Monday. 16 hours worth of work gets done on Monday. We still have 4 hours worth of work to do, and between 8 and 10 o'clock on Tuesday, we only have 2 hours duration, but Ted and Jill are both going to work 2 hours. So we get 4 hours of work done then. Between now, 8 o'clock on Monday morning, and 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, we get the 20 hours worth of work done. In that case, the amount of work is longer than the duration available. These are the 3 ways that work and duration relate to each other, and this is how you start to figure out the duration on your project tasks. If you want a task to go faster, usually we can put some more people on there and it will go faster. It might not always go as fast as we want. Sometimes putting more people on there slows things down a little bit because people just get in each other's way a little, but putting more people on a task typically will get it done faster. So when we're looking at the duration of our projects, first what we need to do is figure out how much work has to be done on a specific task, and then we figure out, well, how many people are we going to put on that to get a certain duration. The other thing is elapsed time. Elapsed time is that calendar and the clock. That clock, this thing, wing, that just goes around. That second hand just swings around there all the time. It never stops. The calendar, you tear a page off of that calendar and throw it away every day. It doesn't stop. So that's real life time out there. What we've said is, instead of a week being 7 days, oh no, it's 5 days. Instead of a day being 24 hours, no, it's 8 hours. We've converted elapsed time into duration time and said this is the time we've set aside to do work. So it could be for 10-hour days or however you have it set up in your organization. But we said these are the times available to do work. During that duration, we can get more or less work done. On one of these little bars across here, you'll see they're pretty tall. That means that on Thursday and Friday, we had some people working, and so we got more than 8 hours worth of work done on the task. On Wednesday that 1 week, we got less than 8 hours work done on that task. Weekend, got nothing done on the task. When you talk to people about how long it's going to take to do the project, you need to find out what people are talking about and what terms they're using. What do people want to know when they say, when's the project going to be done? They're only caring about elapsed time. They just want to know the date on the calendar and the time on the clock. They don't care about work and duration. The only way that they're going to see those show up and the way they're going to worry about those is cost and time on our SQCT target that we looked at earlier on. Scope, quality, cost, and time. Work and duration will show up in the cost and time piece. We're going to talk about putting your full team together. There are 2 ways to get your team members on here. One of them, you recruit people or you assign people. Sometimes there's that sort of water cooler assignment. You need people on your project team, just walk down the hallway and grab who's ever standing around looks like they're not doing much. Those people may or may not want to be on your team. They may or may not want to see a successful outcome to the project. It's always best to have people on the project team that want to see a successful outcome to this, that want to work on the team. So we ask people, this is the project we're working on. We need somebody out of this group to work on this project. Is there anyone in this group, because you have the expertise to do this part of the project we need, is there anybody in this group that would like to work on this project? And so people say, yes, we would like to work on that. So we choose from those people. You also have to work with their functional managers, because a lot of these people have bosses that's not you. Typically, as project managers, we don't have any direct authority over anybody on our project teams. All we have are our leadership skills to get people to do things. And we do have to work with their functional managers because they're the ones that have to release them to work on our projects. We might have a kickoff meeting initially where we bring everybody together to say, okay, this is the project we're going to work on. There's one group that does this on a regular basis. They typically have projects that last about 2 years in length, and they'll have somebody from the United States, somebody from Europe, they'll have somebody from Canada, and they'll have somebody from the Pacific Rim that will be on the project team. They typically get together only once during the project physically. They'll get together for a kickoff meeting for 2 days, someplace in the world, go over what's going on in the project, how they're all going to work together, how they're going to communicate, how they're going to trade things off, hand things off to one another as they're moving through the project. And then they typically use video conferencing and a lot of telephone conferences along the way as well, but a lot of video conferencing. But they'll have a face-to-face kickoff meeting. And we can, just introduce all the team members, let them see each other, get to know each other. clarify the project, answer any questions along the way, any kind of work we need to do to get this project kicked off. We can do that up front. Now we're going to add resources. The best way to put resources on your project is by looking at three things that will come into play here. One is, can the person do this task? Will they do this task? And are they available during the time frame when we need this task done? So if we look at this project, we're going to do a little bit of work in our house. We're going to remodel the bathroom. And we've laid out all the tasks that we need to have done, and we've assigned people on here because these people, yes, can do this, and they've all said, yeah, we'd be happy to work on this project. But we got a little premature. We assigned them before we laid out our schedule, and all of a sudden when we look at it, we find, uh-oh, we double scheduled people in a few places. What we did with our project is scheduled everybody before we put the times together. We didn't lay out our schedule yet, and so we didn't really know when we needed people to do the tasks. Now we do, and we found out we have some problems. We created these problems ourselves. We found out now that all of a sudden we have the plumber scheduled in two places at the same time, Sue scheduled in two places at the same time, Kaz scheduled in two places at the same time. What we have to do when we have our project laid out and our resources assigned is we have to make sure we don't have these problems, and if we find them, then we just fix them. So find the problems and then fix them. Ideally, we don't have any of these, but when we do, which we will, we fix them, and there's a number of ways to do that. Plumber, for example. We're working with a plumbing contractor, and all they need to do is send over Nancy and Todd on the same day. They have a lot of plumbers that work there, whole group of plumbers. We just get 2 of them. Sue, we just say, well, Sue is really good at this custom shower tile design she's going to do for us. We really want her to do that, but anybody could hang up that medicine cabinet. Oh, Gus down the street isn't doing much these days. He's a good handyman. He can come down and do that. You just need another body. We talk to Kaz and say, hey, Kaz, could you just work a couple of 16-hour days for us? And Kaz says, nope, I only work 8-hour days. Don't work 16. Don't care what happens to your project. Oh, no. What are we going to do now? We want Kaz working on this because he's an excellent woodworker, and we don't want to get anybody else in here for that. We want Kaz to do all of this. So we just say, well, Kaz, we can just extend the completion date of the project. Get one part of it done, and then just work on the other part, and we'll just extend the completion date of the project. So fix these things any way you can. Find them and fix them. When we talk about putting people on the project, we're going to talk about who is going to do what, and there's a responsibility assignment matrix, an RAM, or a RACI chart. You typically hear this called a RACI chart. And this comes from the Project Management Institute. It has the person, and it has the activity, and then it has different kinds of things that people will do. Who's responsible for this? Who's accountable? Who do we have to consult? And who do we have to inform? And here's an example of one of these things filled out. So here are all the different activities. Here are all the people across the top. So our first activity, Sandra, she's going to be accountable for it. Todd is going to actually be responsible for it. Ramiro, we have to inform Ramiro about this. We inform Sue, and we inform Ed. The second one, Sandra gets informed. Todd is accountable. Ramiro is actually responsible for this. And we're going to have to consult Sue and Ed to get information from them so we can do this task properly. So the responsibility assignment matrix, often called a RACI chart. Who does what? How do different people get involved with different tasks? When you schedule yourself as a resource on the project, you're going to have changing roles. Sometimes you're going to be the project manager, and when you're actually doing one of the tasks, you're going to be one of those people that has a name on the task, and you will be a task doer. When you're doing a task that might be very comfortable, it's kind of nice and quiet and easy, doing this nice little thing here, nobody's running the project. It's all on its own. It's on autopilot. It's just roaring down the tracks all on its own, and you have to hope that the plan is really good and you've got it laid out well so that it can run by itself for a little while. You can work on a task. Just don't forget to peek your head up once in a while and see how that project is going. You have 2 different roles, and a lot of what you'll need to do is manage your time really well to do that. Leading and managing the project team. We want everyone to work well on this team together. We're going to delegate tasks to people. Sometimes that might be difficult to delegate these tasks to people for a number of different reasons. We just don't really believe that team members can do these tasks all that well. They certainly can't do it as well as we can. You just don't want to take the time to instruct anybody on how to do it. I'll just do it myself. It's easier than trying to tell people how to do it. The project manager might just be too egotistical. You might have seen project managers who are not good at delegating. They have a great project team and the project manager still seems to be doing everything and the team's sitting around doing not very much. It might also be difficult to accept some of these tasks if you're a project team member. There are no rewards for doing this. Guess what? I'm already working a 50-hour week and all of a sudden you want me to work some more on another project? What do I get for that? A whole bunch of headache and pain and toil here. They're insecure because they don't really know if they can do a good job on this project. They don't really have the skills to do this. So they're pretty sure they can't do a good job on the project. So they're really insecure about doing this now. They simply just don't want to do the task. All of you have something that you're really good at. You just don't want to do this anymore. You don't like doing it. You've done enough of it in your life. Simply don't want to do it. You just don't trust the project manager, the organization, something, you're just not really sure about working on this project. What we're going to do is we're going to evaluate potential team members to see if we think that they're going to be able to do the project and they will do the project. Here's a little list of things we can take a look at. Daily job duties. Do we want to do the same thing on the project that they typically do during the day in their regular job? If they do, yeah, they're probably pretty good at this. Special skills. Sometimes we find that people have special skills that we didn't ever really recognize before. And now they get on this project team and realize, gee, we need some statistics done on this, and none of us are really good at statistics. Oh, except Karen over there is pretty good at statistics. You know what? Let's let her do a lot of that. Unique background or education. Some people have gone back to school, continued their education. They may have really great experience at another organization that they haven't been able to use here at our organization yet. So they've got some skills that we could actually draw on. We just haven't been able to do that yet. Now let's take a look at can people do things, or will people do things. Those are can they do it, will they do it. History of receiving delegated tasks. You all know that some people, you give them a task, and they go do that task, and they come back way before you thought they were going to do this thing. They're all done, completed, it's way better than you thought they were going to do it, and they're asking for more work to do. Other people, you give them some task to do, off they go, you never see that person again. So how are they receiving delegated tasks? Willingness to accept delegated tasks, willingness to accept training and guidance along the way. Previous experience on a project team. You all know somebody who simply does not work well with other humans. Don't put them on a project team. If they can't work well with other people, you don't want them on your team. You want people who can work well together on teams. Overall level of self-confidence. Typical level of response to being monitored. And this is an interesting one, personal ambitions and desires. If you can put a person on a task that they really want to work on, it fits in with exactly what they want to be doing. You're going to have a great team member that's going to do a great job for you. That also ties in with a thing that we've seen called Maslow's hierarchy. What is this all about? Maslow says there are different motivating forces for us along the way. Physiological, first of all, we just all need air, water, food. Got to have those things. And we need safety. Well, I've got some food, I've got some water, things are pretty good around here. The environment's not all that bad. I'd kind of like to get out of the rain. I need a little cave here. I need some heat. Going to start a little fire. I need some kind of clothing. I'm going to make some clothing out of some plants or some animal skins or something. Okay, those things are done pretty well. You can't do anything about this as a project manager. You have to rely on the organization. What do these two levels look like in the modern business world? These look like the salary and benefit package that the people on your project team are receiving. We all want to have a car we can drive back and forth to work. We want to have a house to live in. We want to have a retirement plan. We want to have money put away for our kids' college. We want to have some kind of health insurance for our family. If I have to worry about some of those things, and I'm worrying about how I'm going to pay this or take care of that thing back home with the family, I'm not really thinking a lot about the task on the project. So you rely on the organization to do those first two. The second two, that's you. People want to work in groups. They want to work well in groups. That's your leadership skills. So you put your leadership skills into place so that everybody's working well together, and along the way, everything's going great. People say, I love working on this team. We do really well. Everything's going really well. Our project manager has everybody working really well together. We communicate well. We share ideas, we solve problems, we resolve conflict among ourselves, we do everything really well along the way. You know what? I just would like somebody to notice my contributions to the team once in a while. This ego thing comes into play. All you have to do along the way as a project manager is just say thank you to your people now and then. Huge leadership skill that really helps the project move forward. Say thanks once in a while to people. Then we have this last one. You can't do anything about this one either. This is self-actualization. This is the one that people will work on a task because it's exactly what they want to do. We talked about that elephant group charging through the little crops in that village in northern India. There's a group of people that actually help little villages like that, help little villages grow those kind of crops, help them with agricultural development projects. This group goes around, it's a nonprofit organization, they go around the world, and they help communities sustain themselves. The people that work on these projects are off in weird little parts of the world, living in little huts all over the place. They don't get paid very much. Half of them have been captured and held hostage because some revolution popped up around them. They don't have any great luxurious life. They love what they do and they keep going back and doing these projects. As soon as they're done with one, they go back and do another one. Why? There is no reason at all except they get a great big feeling in their heart that makes them feel great, evidently. I don't know what it is. It's self-actualization. They love doing what they do and they will just continue to do that forever. One of those people has never been back to the United States in 37 years. He went off to one of these projects and just gone from one to another to another to another. Can't even figure out any reason to come back here. He just wants to go to another project. Self-actualization. If you can find the right task for the right person, turn them loose, all you have to do is point them in the right direction and support them all you possibly can. Executing the project. After we get our project team put together, we're going to actually do the project. This is the third group that we have in our process groups, executing the project. It's time to just go do it. You've got your team put in place, get them all in the starting blocks and say, okay, everybody ready, set, go, boom. During that time, we may hear, we just want you to get this done faster and cheaper if you possibly can. Why do we want to do that? Well, we might have to meet some kind of a deadline. We might need to increase profit margins. There just might be some sort of market demand out there. Longer project life cycles, take advantage of time-limited opportunities. There's all kinds of numbers that people want, all kinds of reasons people want us to do these things faster and cheaper. What does that look like? All projects should give us more than we put into them. A, this is the investment in the project. It starts there at the beginning. We run this project through a selection process and say, yes, we'll do this project. We plan the project out. We execute the project. And now the project is underway. So A is our investment in the whole thing. B, now we start getting something back out of the project, something extra. In for-profit organizations, this is money coming back. In fact, this curve is laid out for new products that are going to be released to market, so new product development. But it does have something to say for every single project. We need to get more out of the project than we put into it. So that whole little piece beyond B, that's the extra bit we get out of the project. There'll be some time out here whether it's net profit or for like that group that does those agricultural development projects and helps small communities sustain themselves. I don't know what the extra is they get out of these projects, but they get something out of it because they keep going and doing these projects. If you're in a nonprofit organization, a government organization, it may be hard to figure out what that extra bit is. Also, if you're in a for-profit organization, most of us aren't ever doing a project that goes to a customer outside the organization who's going to write a check and give us money. We don't really see that extra profit. Somehow it goes, what we do goes to somebody else inside the organization. So even in for-profit organizations, we have to figure out what is the extra bit we're getting out of these projects over and above what we're putting into them. And then there's this final little bit out here where, okay, we're going to wind this project down and be done with it. This thing is really not giving us anything extra anymore. We're going to close this thing out and move on to something else. While we're executing the project, communication is going to be a big thing. The two things during execution we're really looking at are we getting the project done, and we need to manage all of the stakeholders and the project team, and a communication plan will be a big important part of that. We're going to talk about monitoring and controlling your project. This is the fourth in our series of process groups, controlling the project. Controlling the project. We're going to monitor and control this project as we move forward. What we're going to do is look at a couple of things. We're going to see how we're doing with the progress on the project. Are we on schedule? And we're going to see how we're doing with spending. Are we within the budget that we have originally laid out for the project? We're going to look at the budget we originally laid out for the project. Track and control the project. Here's some steps to this. We're going to monitor this thing, so we watch what's going on. Then we evaluate that. Then we're going to take some controlling actions if necessary for the sole reason of successfully delivering the results of this project. Tracking takes two tools. We have to have a schedule. We have to originally say this is what the project should look like, and then that takes the communication plan. We have to get information about our project to see how we're doing with spending and how we're doing with progress. So again, our communication plan is going to be a key element in monitoring and controlling this project. Communication is an essential to success. When we look at the communication plan, who needs to be in the communication loops? Why do they need to be in there? How can the project manager keep them informed and involved? What we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving people information about the schedule and getting information from our team members about the schedule. We can track the schedule separately from spending, so we can put some charts together to do that, some spreadsheets. There's all kinds of elaborate things we can put together to do that. And what we're looking at is what's estimated at this point, where we actually are at this point, and how much does that vary. Earned value management is a way to help us look at spending and progress on the same chart. What does this show us? The solid blue line is our baseline. This says that we have a project that takes a certain amount of time, the number of weeks across the bottom, and it will cost a certain amount of money. When we look at most projects, they typically have one of these sideways S-curves. We first start off in the project, not doing so many tasks all at the same time, and so not so much work is happening, and we're not spending so much money. In the middle of the project, a whole lot of things are going on at the same time. We're spending money like crazy. And then near the end of the project, it sort of tapers off now, where the last few tasks are being done. We're not doing quite as much work. We're not spending quite as much money. So typically, projects will have a curve that looks like this. And this is called our plan. This is our planned value curve, and it's the baseline for our project. There are two other curves on here that we're going to look at. One of them is the project for the project, and that's that pink line on there. So this one says, you know what, we're ahead of schedule on this. We're moving faster than we thought. And in fact, as soon as we get that total amount of work done, the project is done. So this project is finished. And it's also over budget because we dumped in some extra overtime or something to spend some more money to get the thing done faster. There might have been some requirement that happened out there. Maybe we had a customer or a competitor that was getting to the marketplace sooner than us, that we realized, oh, we got to catch up. So we put some overtime in here, a little bit more money, more people on this so that we can get things done faster. This one is ahead of schedule, but also a little bit over budget. This is what we're looking at. We want one that's exactly on track, beginning to end of the project. This means that our estimates were perfect. We put all the right people on all the right tasks. Everybody's working at a self-actualization level. No risks hit the project. Everything went perfect. You're a great project manager. Everything's perfect from beginning to end. I don't think many of you are going to use earned value analysis, but what we need to do is have that picture in our head of where should we be, where are we with progress and spending. Track the project. We're going to compare where we are with where we should be. What does the schedule look like? How much work do we have done compared with how much work we should have done? And that's going to be the variance in the schedule for earned value management. That's called schedule variance or schedule performance index, and there are formulas for those. We're not going to do the formulas in this little session, but if you're interested in that, there are plenty of places to look, and you can also look in the project management body of knowledge. Take a look at that. There'll be some formulas in there for you. And then also cost is the same thing. We're just going to look at how much money should we be spending right now and how much have we spent. And if you look at earned value management, again, there's a cost variance formula and a schedule cost performance index. If you're using earned value management, you have planned value and earned value. You have earned value and actual cost. And those are going to be the elements involved in some of your formulas. What happens if things go off track when you're working with your project? So all of a sudden you're using earned value analysis or just some piece of paper and a pencil to draw it, however you draw things, or keep track on some sort of spreadsheet or something to find out how you're doing with everything, and you find out that the project is going off track. First, check the targets to make sure they were ever realistic to begin with. Look at the strategy. How are we actually doing this? Are we using the right strategy for this? Are our estimates correct? Reporting. Are we getting the right numbers from a project team? Maybe we don't have the right numbers from the project team. Human element is the last thing to take a look at. Typically we find out that 85 to 90% of the problems we're going to run across in the project are some sort of system issues, something wrong with what happened in planning or something, and only 10% are going to be because of the project team. Your team, the organization, the customer, other stakeholders. It's going to be a small element in all of this. Do something to fix this. Monitor the project, evaluate what's happening, then we're going to step in and control this thing somehow so that we can get this thing done and completed and successfully. And again, what do we have to work with? Crash the project, fast track the project, reduce the scope, or as a last resort, you could reduce the quality. It all goes back to the SQCT targets and the strategy. Lower the quality as a last resort. Reduce the scope. Increase the budget. Develop a new strategy. Replace team members. Anything else that you can think of. Remember, replacing team members, that's one of the very last things to look at. That's hardly ever the problem. If expectations change along the way, and they probably will, there's a few things you can do. Refocus that customer back on the agreements that you made up front. We already had these discussions and we agreed that this is what we're going to do in the project. Adjust the project scope with some kind of a change order. Redefine the project. We can come up with new SQCT targets. Just go back to the beginning and redefine this thing. Come up with a new strategy for doing this. We're going to talk about closing the project. Closing is the last of our 5 process groups. We identified all the necessary deliverables for the project. We laid out our charter, our scope. We planned how we were going to get those things done that we agreed upon in the initiating phase. We actually went out and did that. Now, in controlling, we monitored and controlled this thing all the way through. And now it's time to stop the project. Things have been successful, it's all done, it's over, it's finished. We have to wrap up a few last little details and stop this thing. We did a lot of work to start it, now we have to stop it. Here's a little checklist of some things you can do. We have to do things internally and some things externally. First of all, just complete the project. We started off with done looks like this. Now we're moving along and we get to this thing that says, looks like done. I think we're done. You say, yep. That's done. Project is finished. We just dust that off a little bit, polish it up, and say, okay, finished. Go show it to our customers, our key stakeholders, and say, project looks like it's done. Everybody agrees, project's done. Finish the project. Then, close out all the details. There's a number of things. Some of the things that we have to close out will be internal things. Some will be external things. We have to pay some people. We have to get paid by some people. We have to stop some things that are happening inside the organization, like we're getting some support, some administrative support from somebody. We don't need that anymore. We have a room that we've been using for the last year and a half every Tuesday morning at 9:30 in the morning till 11. We don't need that anymore. We just let people know that we're done with those things. We started some electronic number in the system in the organization so that we could charge our time against this project, and now we don't need to do that anymore, so we need to turn those numbers off. There are a number of things internally and externally we need to close out. We also need to just stop the project team. People are done with the project. Project is over, finished, done. Let people know that. Say thank you to people along the way and let them know that this thing is finished. Review the project success. Every project, no matter how good it was, could have gone better in some areas and went really well in some areas. No matter how bad the project is, could have gone better in some areas, went really well in some areas. Capture those things so that we can be better at the next project that we do. If we can share that with the whole organization somehow, the whole organization gets better at project management. But at least we as project managers need to look at our projects and make ourselves better next time. And we also need to reward everybody, recognize them for what they did, celebrate a little bit. All you need to do is say thank you to people. You should have been doing that all along the way, but at the end of the project, just take one more chance to say thank you to people. And it's amazing how powerful a simple little thing can be, like getting everybody together just for some sort of a little pizza party at lunchtime. It doesn't cost you very much to order in a couple of pizzas and bring in something to drink, probably non-alcoholic something. You can get some great little carbonated juices at Trader Joe's. It just never ceases to amaze me at the end of a project if you just pull a little thing together like that and set everybody down and say, hey, we're done with that project. It was a job well done. And start to talk about some things about what kind of fun you had along the way, what the biggest troubles were along the way. Everybody just kind of go through that and helps everybody disconnect from the project. And also, it's just a great way to say thank you. It never ceases to amaze me how something that simple is so powerful for your project team. Remember, all you have to get the right person in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing with the right tools and the right support on your project, that's your leadership skills. Saying thank you to people is a huge leadership tool that will help you get people on your next project working well for you. With that, we'll just wish you all the best in your project management endeavors. Thank you very much for joining us here at UC Irvine. We appreciate your time. Thanks. Welcome, folks, and welcome to the lecture on project teamwork. Teamwork is one of the most essential parts of project success, as we will see today as we're looking through this series of slides. As we've discussed before, if we look at our overview of project management, look at our diamond here that starts with project management and the results we're aiming toward. Results are one of the key elements in project management. What in the world are we trying to get out of this project? There are two groups of issues that the project manager has to deal with from the beginning to the end of the project constantly. We're always balancing the technical and task issues. Technical and task issues, those are all of the areas around subject matter expertise. Everyone on the project team has some subject matter expertise, and they're going to be involved in doing some tasks. And we've looked at these tasks, we've figured out the tasks for the project by doing a number of the tools that we've discussed before, where we're going to look at the work breakdown structure, we'll look at a schedule, we'll figure out what has to be done, when it has to be done, what are the deliverables, what's all the work that has to be done in the project. All of these are around the tasks of the project and the technical parts of the project. And technical doesn't mean just the IT group, it means everybody's subject matter expertise. Project managers, especially from some disciplines like my own, engineering, have a little bit of a problem when we get to another part of this project, the other side, the human dynamics side. Every time that a task has to be done on a project, somebody has to do that task. Every time that we're doing something on the project, there are all of our stakeholders that are looking at that, wondering about that, being involved in that, making decisions about that. So we have our team and our stakeholders, the other stakeholders, that are all going to be involved around and in all the task issues involved with the project and the technical issues. Today, we're going to talk about the teamwork. So in this lecture series, teamwork is the issue we'll talk about. In another group of lecture slides we'll look at, we'll also talk about stakeholders along the way, but for now we're going to concentrate on the teamwork. So how important is teamwork and a focus on the overall human dynamics part of the project? CH2M Hill is a large firm that does all kinds of projects around the world, and their project managers all have the same background and training. They're all engineers of some kind, and they all got started in project management pretty much like everyone else, where they just were an expert on part of the project, and then they got to be made the project manager for a whole project, even though they weren't an expert on every element of that project. So somehow they learned to be good project managers. CH2M Hill did a survey inside their own company to find out why some project managers are bringing in the right project at the right quality level, within budget, on time, in a way that makes all of the stakeholders and all of the customers happy with the whole project and the whole process of getting that project done. And these project managers have taken good enough care of their team so that the team is still together and wants to work together again on another project. And they want to work with this project manager. They have some other project managers that are not doing as well. So CH2M Hill said, why are some project managers doing very well and some project managers are not doing so well? Let's take a look at what the project managers that are doing well are managing in their projects. And what they found out is that successful project managers are spending about 20% of their time working with the tasks and the subject matter and the technical parts of the project, working with all the tools, and they're spending 80% of their time working on the human dynamics issues, most of that being working with their project teams. That's good for CH2M Hill, but it also has something to say for all of us as project managers, that yes, the tools, the techniques, the methods are important, and so is successfully working with our project teams. We all have a way that we like to work with our project teams. If we look at McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y model, it says that some of us prefer to micromanage our project teams. We want to be in charge of everything. We want to be in charge of every task. We want to be in charge of every person working on every task and really directing them in everything that they're doing. There are other project managers that say, you know, I have put the right people on this project team. I've put the people that know the most about these tasks on the individual tasks. There's no reason for me to go tell them how to do those tasks and micromanage their work. They're the experts on this and they know much more about it than I do. Remember, you are not the subject matter expert on every single part of the project. It's your job as project manager to integrate all of that subject matter expertise into one overall total project. We'll take a look at a different model here. Blake and Mouton built on McGregor's work and said, well, let's put a little model here that says some people have a focus on people in the project and some managers have a focus on results. The idea is that we can do both of these. Let's take a look first at someone who isn't focused on either of these. A 1-1 impoverished manager, they don't care about a successful completion to this project at all. There was a project manager put in charge of, and this was an important project, they were going to implement a standardized project management methodology throughout the entire organization, and this person was in charge of that. They also happened to be the person that did not like project management at all, did not like the discipline, did not think it should be going on in their company, and quietly sabotaged the entire project. They had no focus on results, and they had no focus on the team members of this project at all. Let's look at the one that's a 9-1, authority and obedience. This is a project manager that says, I'm going to control everything that happens on the project. Project manager puts this project team together, starts on the project, and is one of the project managers who is going to micromanage everybody on the project. The problem was that that project manager had put together a wonderful team. Together, this team knew everything about this project, everything that needed to be done, and they'd worked on other projects before. They worked very well together, and they could just do this project without anybody even helping them at all. They just needed to be pointed in the right direction. Done looks like this, that's all they needed to know. They could make that happen. This project manager didn't turn them loose to do that. This project manager tried to direct every move everybody made on the team, and the project didn't go anywhere. Finally, somebody in the organization said, look, you've got a great team here, get out of their way. So this project manager said, well, that's not my preferred style, but I guess if you think maybe the team can do this without much direction from me, I'll give that a try. As soon as the project manager got out of the way and let the team start to do the project took off and it was a great success. We have somebody in the middle, 5-5 managers. They're great managers. They're the standard managers in the organization. They do a great job. Most of us fall in that area. We're doing the best we can with what we have, and we're doing a great job. Then there's the 9-1 managers, the ones that are very focused on people, maybe not quite so focused on results. There was a project manager, happened to be the CEO leading a large project in a company a few years ago. This company was developing a brand new product based on, and the CEO didn't know it, but some of his team members did, based on outdated technology. One of their competitors was bringing out a new product based on the brand new technology. The CEO, this project leader that did not want to get too involved with results, was so focused on people and on teamwork that he never wanted to hear anything negative. He didn't want to hear that this brand new product they were coming out with wasn't going to be viable in the marketplace. Didn't want to hear that it was based on outdated technology. Didn't want to hear that the new competitor had one coming out right at the same time based on new technology. Before this company got their product released based on old technology, their competitor about a month earlier than they did, released the brand new product with the new technology, and this company never released their product at all. And the team was disbanded and all kinds of bad things happened along the way. Let's look at somebody that's the 9-9 manager. Those are outstanding managers, outstanding project managers, outstanding team leaders. Those are the people that say, yes, we can get the results we need as a team, and we're going to work together to make that happen. We're all going to work together in a way that we can communicate well with each other. We can share ideas. We can share tasks. We know how to hand things off to each other. We know the processes we have to work with. We can work together well as a team. We're going to take a look at some of the foundational tools that would help a manager do that. So if you're a project manager trying to figure out, okay, how do I best get things done? Let's look at some of the teamwork foundations that are going to be key to helping you with that. Zachary Wong, in his book, Human Elements in Project Management, has broken what we do in the project with the team into 3 separate elements. Content, we have to work on something, so the project is working on something. We're trying to get something accomplished, the results. How do we do that? The process. What are the processes we have in place? Yes, we do have the initiate, plan, execute, control, and close processes. We also need to have some processes in place on how we work together. How does this team discuss things? How does this team make decisions together? How do we make handoffs from one team member to another along the way? What are the processes we put in place to work together well? And then within those processes, what are the behaviors that different people display? All of us have some things that we do very well that help our teams move forward. And all of us have a few little things that we do that might get in the way of the team from time to time. So there's different behaviors we're going to display. What are those things? Content, process, behaviors. We're going to take a look at our teamwork triangle here. We're going to first start looking at content issues. First, we have to have a meaningful purpose for the project. Somebody has to want to be on this project and want to see a successful outcome for this project. So we'll say we have people on here that say, yeah, that's a project I want to work on, and I want to see a successful outcome. What do we have to do first? We have to set some common goals. If we decide what we're going to do is landscape our company headquarters, and we have 7 people sitting around the table, we say, okay, our job is to landscape the company headquarters. There are 7 different pictures right there. Everyone has a different picture in their head of exactly what that landscaping is going to look like. We need to come up with just one of those, and then we're going to work toward that goal. So we have to come up with a common goal. Even though we know what our project is, when everybody sits around the table, everyone has a little bit different picture of what done looks like. So we need to actually decide this is what we're going to work toward. So we agree on that. Then we find out common approaches to this. How are we actually going to get that done? There was a project team that was put in place to do a project. They started working on the project, and after 6 months, the project manager had to call someone in to help with the team because the team was in complete disarray. Team members hated working on this project. They hated everything about this project, and they really pretty much hated the project manager as well, because they had something to do with the project. Now, people are starting to not come to the meetings. Now people also have found out that this is a very important project, high visibility with high-level managers who say people have to go to those project team meetings, they have to do this project. So now, if people don't go to the meetings, then they get in trouble with the personnel office. Their bosses have to write up a letter for them, put them in their file. People are getting punished for not going to these team meetings, so now people are calling in sick on team meeting days. Nobody wants to go to these team meetings. The person that came in to see this meeting that the project manager called in said, "Can you just come in and see what's going on with this team? You know, give me a few ideas about what's happening." 20 minutes into the meeting, this person that had come in from the outside said, "Let me stop here for just a second and ask this team one question. What is your project?" The team looked at him and said, "We don't really know." During that 6 months, they had tried this a little bit, and they'd try some of that. Another small group would go off and try something else. The team had no clue what their project was. All they did during that first meeting was define a project within this big, broad umbrella that they had to work under. They defined one small, focused project, and then they found out a way to work on that together, started working on that, and the project came together very well, and in 3 months they had a great project, great result, and management was really happy with everything that they did. But they had to come up with some common goals and an agreed upon approach to get this thing done. Your project's not going to happen without that. So the teamwork pieces, a project manager can do all kinds of wonderful things with setting up a good team process where everyone communicates well with each other, where we're managing the dysfunctional behaviors in the group, where we're doing any conflict resolution what we need, we're making decisions together, we're sharing information, we're communicating together, everything's working well with the team, or should be working well with the team, we know all the tools, but still, for some reason, the team's not coming together. For the team to have a good, solid foundation to work from, for the teamwork to ever come together, common goal, agreed upon approach. Where do we get the common goal? That's our charter and our scope. The agreed upon approach, that's our project plan. So those are tools we already have. With those two pieces done well, we have a great chance at having good teamwork. So if we want to prevent poor teamwork, we need to build on a solid foundation first, and a lot of it comes right from the tools that we already know. What we're going to be working on in content: scope, quality, cost, and time. And remember, once we define the scope clearly, once we figure out the quality requirements, at that point we can tell people, well, it'll cost this much money and take this amount of time to do this. So this is the content we'll be working with. Processes. Let's talk about the processes. So now we know what our content is. What are the processes we work with? Communication. We'll talk a little more about communication in some of the subsequent slides. But in general, every project team has to have a communication plan. It's just, we have to know how we communicate with each other. We have to know who else has to be communicated with. Who do we need to get information from? Who do we need to give information to? So communication will be a big piece of working together. And what does that communication look like? What do our processes look like for doing that? Problem solving, we just need to figure out how we solve problems in here. And again, we've looked at, in some previous modules, we've looked at different decision-making styles. Some of that's going to help us with problem solving. Some of the things that we do will be creative problem solving along the way. So we need to figure out how we're going to create ideas and how we're going to be creative about things. We also need to manage difficult issues that come up. We'll have a little grid that can help us with that we'll look at soon. And we need to figure out how to share responsibility. One of the things we need to do is make handoffs along the way from one team member to another. So we put a process in place for that. Process in place for that would cause us to not have problems like one team had. One team had, it was a classroom training session. They provided classroom training sessions. They didn't have very many good processes to make handoffs from one to another. So what happened was they were putting on a training session, and somebody in the group had arranged a room. Somebody in the group had arranged materials, so all the materials were printed. Somebody in the room had arranged for all of the participants to be in the training. So on training day, the room is set up, the training materials are on the tables, all the people are sitting in their chairs, but along the way there was one dependency line that went from one task box to another on the schedule that said, okay, Now this leads to getting a trainer. Nobody made the handoff to get the trainer, so now there's a whole group of people sitting in here, materials sitting there, everybody ready to go. There's nobody that's going to come in and do any of the training for this group. It was just forgotten. So we have to figure out how we're going to make handoffs along the way with all these things. We look at our Team Foundations triangle here again. We find that we put people, remember, on the team because of their subject matter expertise. What comes along with them? Their problem-solving skills and their interpersonal skills. So we put people on the project team just based on what they know how to do. We don't even think about how they're going to work with others. All of a sudden we get people on the project team, and now we as project managers and now team leaders, because that's our other role as project manager, being the team leader, we have to figure out, oh, how do we get these people to work together in any kind of reasonable way at all? Everyone brings something to the team. It's our job to bring all of that out and get the team to work together well with all of their expertise and all of their interpersonal skills along the way. So everybody brings their skills and their knowledge about the topics. We also have them bring their interpersonal skills as well. When we're setting those goals for the team, sometimes they're set for the team and sometimes the team gets to set them themselves. Either one of those can lead to good project teamwork as long as we have these. We just need to know where we're going with this project. There are a couple of other things we need to do just as a starting point to give us a good solid foundation for teamwork. One, clarification of the project, the results, the deliverables, clarification of the roles. What's the team leader role? What's the project manager role? What's the role of the team members? What are the roles of all the people that support this project? What are the roles of the stakeholders? What are the roles of the customers in here? What are the roles of the vendors? How do we work with them along the way? Our suppliers, our contractors, how do we work with everybody? The project manager has to bring the team together and manage the teamwork throughout the project. So this is what the project manager is going to be doing all along the way. Duties and responsibilities. The first duty and responsibility that every project team has is do the project. That's it. Complete all of the project tasks. We have to collaborate. So somehow we're going to have to work together. You may have seen project teams that all work as individuals and somehow never share information with each other. Sometimes that's because they don't communicate, or sometimes it's because they don't communicate well, or they don't communicate enough, or they don't communicate about enough things. Showing respect. We need to show respect for each other. I know some things and you don't know this, but it doesn't mean that because I know this one thing and you don't, that I don't have any respect for you because you don't know anything. That's wrong. Every project team member has some area of expertise. There's one project team, you can't really call them a team. It's a group, and everyone is very proud of their expertise. And they don't have any respect for anybody else's expertise. All they can do is point out that, well, you don't know what I know, so you must not be very smart. Their projects don't do very well. Their projects are always over budget, their projects are always late, the quality sometimes really suffers. They have a real hard time working together. Sharing information, ideas, and opinions. Sharing ideas, information, and opinions. Again, that project team never shares any information, ideas, and opinions. Other project teams do, and they do very well with this, solving problems, making decisions. All of these are things that we have to do together as a project team. One of the things that will help us do this well is just talking with each other. So first of all, we have to talk with each other, so we have to say some words. And in that process, we have to listen to each other. When we listen to each other, that also means that we have to understand each other. Do we agree with each other? Maybe we do or maybe we don't. Through enough discussion, we can finally come to some area of agreement. But the first thing we have to do is actually speak with each other, listen to each other, and then understand each other. So there's a process that we go through with verbal communication that helps us do that. What we're going to need to do with the communication in the project is to figure out a few things. Who needs to be in our communication loops? I'm a project team member. Who do I need to be communicating with? I need to get some information from some of the team members. I need to give information to some of the team members. I need to work somehow with the project manager along the way. There may be some stakeholders I have to work with along the way and communicate back and forth with. Who are all of those people? Why do they even need to be in this loop? Probably because they either have information that we need or they have to have information that we have. And how can we keep all of these people informed? What level of detail do they need? How often do they need to be communicated with? What types of information do different people need? Sometimes you as the team leader are going to have to get information from your team, has to come to you, and sometimes you'll have to give information to your team. We're going to talk about verbal communication. Verbal communication is the starting point for all of our communication, and then we can also add charts and graphs and videos. We can add some visual things along the way to help with our communication. But verbal communication is the foundation for all of it. So we have Daryl and Clyde here that are going to communicate. There are 4 steps. We have four steps to verbal communication, and then we will talk about an additional step that we might decide to add into this. First of all, Daryl has an idea. What happens with communication? It all starts with an idea in our head. So we have our project team members sitting around here. Everybody has ideas in their head. We have to get those ideas out so that everyone can discuss those. We can work with them together as a team. So get the ideas out. Daryl has this idea in his head, so now he's going to say some words that convey those ideas. The first thing that Daryl is going to do is encode that idea. That idea originally looks like some chemicals floating around and some little electronic things snapping around in the brain. There's some little nerve endings sending out some electronic images or messages in the brain. There were some people who won a Nobel Prize just a few years ago for figuring out what that idea looks like in somebody's head. Now, that idea in somebody's head has to get transmitted to somebody else's head. It has to get into their brain, and it has to be the same idea that gets into their brain. First way we're going to do that is say some words. We're going to make some sounds. Daryl's going to figure out, okay, I have to turn this idea, these electronic signals and these chemicals floating around, I have to turn those into some sort of sounds. What will those sounds be? The encoding process is figuring out the sounds. Then we're going to transmit those sounds. So Daryl will transmit those sounds. And what does that look like? This is the foundation for all of verbal communication for people. You breathe in, you breathe out. When you breathe out, you breathe over those little strings in your throat. Breathe over those, tighten them up, loosen them up a little bit to give it different tones. That air comes up into this cavity you have in your head called a mouth. That air goes up there and starts to bounce around. And in there, you're going to make different shapes with your tongue to make different shapes inside there for the air to bounce around and whirl around in. And you're going to make different shapes with your mouth to make sounds come out differently. So all of that air comes up through there, bounces around in here, your tongue makes different shapes, comes out your mouth, and some kind of sound comes out because of all that. So now that's the whole transmitting process. So let's say Daryl decides he's going to send some kind of a message over here to Clyde. Let's see. This is what I'm going to say. Bon dia. Clyde receives that message. What does that look like? Receiving looks like the sound waves that have come out of the air that's come out of Daryl's mouth has turned into sound waves in the air. Those sound waves go right into Clyde's ear here, right in there, right in a little hole in the side of his head. And they start to shake a little piece of skin around in there. That eardrum starts to rattle around. It starts to shake some bones around in there. It starts to squirt some chemicals or some liquid around in there. Then it starts to rustle some hairs around in there. Then all kinds of electronic signals start in the brain here, and some chemicals start floating around in Clyde's brain. He's received this, and what he's doing now is decoding this. So we hope that Clyde actually even got this message, that the sound waves even got here and got inside, so that now Clyde can actually start to decode this. Clyde starts to decode all of this, and then Clyde says, "What?" When Clyde gets this information and doesn't understand it, if he doesn't say anything, it's one-way communication. Daryl has encoded, transmitted, Clyde received, and decoded. One-way communication. When we do one-way communication, we send things out, we hope for the best. We're in a project team. We tell people to go do things, they go off and they do something completely different than what we imagined. We send an email to somebody. It goes out there, they do something completely different than what we wanted them to do. Why? Because they decoded this differently than we meant it to be understood. So an example of this, a friend of mine, very nice guy, John, Wonderful guy, high energy guy, has 3 very high energy boys. The 4 of them together are just wild all the time. They have one woman in that house, Judy, the mother of these boys, John's wife, very mild-mannered woman who just takes care of everybody and keeps all of these 4 from flying off the edge of the earth. They're having a dinner party. The first guest arrives at John's house, knocks on the door. John opens up the door, and John's laughing, and the boys are standing there scared. They just have this horrified look on their face. They're just scared. They're just frozen in place. John says to this guest, "Come on in and help me with this." And John's laughing, and this guest says, "John, what's going on here?" He said, "Just get to work here." This guest also hears Judy in the kitchen slamming around, banging things around out there and swearing. Very uncharacteristic for Judy. So this guest looks around and says, "Okay, John, what's going on here?" John says, "Well, here's what happened. Judy's getting ready for this party. Party's almost ready. Judy forgot one thing for one recipe. She says, 'Boys, I have to run down to the store. I have to get one thing for one recipe. If your dad gets home before I get back, tell him I'll be back in a few minutes.' She runs down to the store, runs back, opens up the door of the house. These 3 boys have decided that's the very best time they could ever think of to throw every single toy they own all over the entire house. The entire house is covered with all of their toys now. So Judy's a little angry about this. So she says, 'All right, boys, I'm going out in that kitchen. I'm going to work on this recipe. I'll be back here in 5 minutes. When I come back, I don't want to see one single toy on the floor of this house.' So she goes back out there. John gets home about now and says, 'Boys, this is interesting. What's going on here?' They explain it to him. John starts to laugh about this. Says, 'Oh, this is just silly. Okay, let's get to work on this.' Now Judy comes back and looks around and says, 'Well, you little devils.' Because when she looks, the boys have put all of the toys on top of the dining room table. They're all over the chairs. They're all over the sofa in the living room. They're all over all the furniture in the entire house. There's not one single toy on the floor. So Judy's really angry, and now she's really going to punish the boys severely. And John says, 'Wait a minute. You can't do that. They did exactly what you told them to do.' That's when Judy got really angry. As project managers, sometimes we let people know what we would like them to do. Off we go. We come back and they've done something completely silly, completely different than what we'd expected. Maybe what they did was exactly what we told them to do, simply because we didn't put this extra piece in here where Daryl says, 'Bon dia,' and Clyde says, 'What?' Because Clyde didn't understand that. We've completed the communication loop with feedback. Feedback is nothing more than the same 4 steps: encode, transmit, receive, and decode, going backwards. So Clyde says, 'What?' And then Daryl says, 'Oh, wait, I've been traveling. Oh, yes, I just got back yesterday. I'm sorry, I forgot where I was at. Oh, yeah, Clyde, I'm sorry. I meant, good morning, how are you today?' Clyde says, 'Oh, I'm doing great. Yeah, how was your trip?' 'Oh, the trip was really good. I had a nice time, brought some stuff back for the family. I know that you were doing some stuff with your family while I was gone, had a little vacation. How did that go?' 'We got a great time. We had a lot of pictures. Everybody had a great time. We went out canoeing.' So back and forth we have this conversation going on. That completes our feedback loop. That's the way that now the person sending the message and the person receiving the message both end up with the same idea in their heads. Now we clearly understand each other. In your project team, people have to talk back and forth. They have to say words back and forth to each other, not just one person talking and everybody else just sitting there listening, and you just hope for the best. So if you're the project leader, the team leader in this project, you need to listen to people as well. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth as project managers because we're supposed to listen twice as much as we speak, at least twice as much. So one-way communication, these 4 steps. 2-way communication, we add feedback to the loop. We're going to look at stages of group development also. What happens in the group is that the group comes together, and when you first put the group together, they are not a team. It's just a group of people sitting around a table. Nothing to do with teams, nothing to do with teamwork. So they're going to go through some stages of coming together as a team, we hope. First thing is forming. Put them together, group comes together. Say, okay, here's all these other people. I see I'm here. Well, wonder how this is all going to go. Next stage is storming. well, I don't really like quite what we're doing here. I don't quite understand the project, and I don't think this is exactly how I want things to go, and I think some of the processes we put in place for working together are not quite the right ways to do all of this, and I think we should change that a little bit. We finally get through all of that into the norming phase where everybody says, okay, now we're able to work well together. Let's start working well together. The norming phase is a phase where everybody is starting to work really well together, and sometimes almost too well together, because the group starts to think they're the best group of people on the face of the earth, and they just want to go everywhere together. You just want to take these people with you every place. You want them to come back to your desk with you and do all of your other work with you. You want them to come home with you and go out for dinner with you. You want to take these people every place with you, because it's a great group of people. I just want to be with them all the time and work on everything that I have with these people all the time. The problem in the norming stage is, since this group thinks they're so good, they don't think they could ever make any mistakes. Sometimes they don't think well enough through what they're doing to look at possible mistakes that some of their decisions may cause. They don't look at possible risks now that they're facing because of some of the decisions or actions that they might take would cause. They're not thinking through things well enough. They're looking kind of right in front of them and saying, this feels really great and seems really good right now. Okay, good, let's move forward. The performing phase is where they finally start to look at things a little more deeply and start to realize, oh, wait a minute, maybe everything we come up with isn't exactly perfect. Maybe we should examine these things a little more, in a little more depth to figure out, should we do anything different here? The forming stage. The forming stage. People need information in the forming stage. When you put your team together, what do they need from you so that they can start to become a team? They need a lot of information. People wonder what they're going to be working on. Clarify the project itself. How are we going to work together on this? So clarify the steps you're going to go through. They're also going to try and figure out, what's my role in this thing? What am I doing here? How do I communicate with each other, with other people on the project team? How do we all communicate with each other? What things can I share in here? How are we going to make decisions? If someone has an idea, how do we examine that and say yes or no to that idea? How do we work together? How do we collaborate? How do we make handoffs from one person to another? How do we do those things in this team? So now we get that all figured out. Everybody is pretty good with how we're working together. And we start working together and realize, this isn't exactly the way that we'd like to work together. Sometimes this stage can really stop a team from moving forward, because we can't resolve some of the issues, or we don't take the time to resolve some of the issues. All the issues have to be resolved somehow. And sometimes we barely even notice we've gone through this. Maybe this is just a simple change in some of the ground rules that we've laid out for the project team. So maybe we lay out ground rules in the forming stage about how we're going to handle meetings. One person talking at a time, listen to everyone before to make sure that they're finished speaking, let everybody finish their statements. Try to understand what they said. If you don't quite understand what they said, ask some clarifying questions. We'll have some ground rules based on things like that to help us work together. And then we decide in the storming phase, well, there's a couple of ground rules we need to add, and maybe one or two we could take out of there that really aren't helpful for us right now. They may be as simple as that. There's another group that is a really bad example of this, a good example, I guess, of the storming stage, because their team had completely stopped working because they got stuck in this storming phase. There's a group of people that had been put together on a government project by a high-level government authority. One of the governors of one of the states in the United States put a group of people together to put a program together that would take care of children from the time they were born until they were 3 years old if they had any kind of severe mental or physical health need. So here's a bunch of little kids that people want to take care of. And this was put together because there are programs to help these children in this state that they were looking at. But sometimes there would be a child who didn't match any of the requirements for any program, and so didn't get any kind of the medical assistance that they really needed. So this group was put together to put a safety net together to make sure we take care of all of the kids who have any severe physical or mental health needs of some kind. So on this, doctors, children's doctors, parents, teachers, psychologists, psychiatrists, people who really want to take care of these little kids. So we put a bunch of people together on this team. After 2.5 years, they have done nothing. So for the whole 2.5 years, there's been some kids that needed some help that didn't get it because these people simply can't work together. What had happened is they'd gotten stuck in the storming phase. They would not talk to each other. In this 2.5 years, they had broken into 3 separate groups within this team, and no one from any of those groups would talk to any of the other groups. So they would come to meetings, and these meetings usually lasted 2 or 3 days. Everybody just sit there and not talk until they went to lunch, until they went to supper in the evening, until they were finished for the day and they went out for the evening someplace. They talked to each other in their group, but they wouldn't talk to the other groups. So again, somebody was brought in from the outside to say, okay, we have to get these people working together somehow. So this person started a meeting at 7:30 in the evening after everybody had their evening meal. Meeting starts at 7:30. And the person brought in from the outside is going to work through this and get everybody to start saying, what is it about these other groups that's keeping you from working with them? By midnight, finally, people started to say this thing and this thing and this thing, and here's what we would like from this other group, and here's what we need from that other group, and if they could do this, we could work together with them, and here's the thing they do that really gets in the way of us working with them. So at midnight, this is all starting to come out. By 1 o'clock in the morning, people have been crying, they've been pounding on the table, they've been hollering. By 2:30 in the morning, everybody is completely worn out. All of the issues have been brought out. Everyone has talked about what they need from the other groups and what the other groups are doing. They get in their way. And now they're starting to figure out, well, maybe we could work together if you'll do this and we'll do that. And now the 3 groups go to bed that night thinking maybe we could work together. They get up in the morning, they're going to be there for 2 more days of meetings. That next 2 days of meetings, they work really well together. They start to put this policy together that they're going to give to the governor. They meet 1 more time for a day and a half, finalize this policy, hand it to the governor. It goes to the legislative body who votes on it, and it went right through without one single change at all. And now all of a sudden the program is in place for these little kids. But they had to get through that storming phase. They were stuck in that for 2.5 years. That's a really strong example of the storming phase. You're not going to have problems that extreme in your projects, but some teams do get stuck in the storming phase like that. With any luck at all, you change a few ground rules and keep moving on to get into the norming phase. What does the team need from you in the norming phase? They need you to challenge them, because the team will think that they are the best people on the face of the earth, and they don't want to listen to anybody from the outside. It's them. They're thinking of everything. They're perfect. No matter what they come up with is the best thing that could possibly be done. You just need to challenge them to think a little bit deeper. Once they start to do that, they'll get into the performing phase. And now what's your job? Your job is to support them. Make sure they're pointed in the right direction. As they're moving forward, you make sure that they have everything they need. When they get to a place in the project where they need some things, you make sure that that's there for them. Whatever kind of support, materials, whatever it is, it's there for them, ready to go, so that they don't have to slow down at all. If you look ahead of the team and you say, oh, there's a barrier in their way, you get that barrier out of the way so that they can just keep moving forward fast. They're moving fast. They're doing well now, and you don't want anything to slow them down. Lao Tzu has a saying about leadership. The good leader is the one that the people say, we love them. The bad leader is the one that the people say, we hate them. The great leader is the one that the people say, we did it ourselves. And when you have your team out there working really well together in this performing phase, you basically just stay out of their way and give them all the support that they possibly need along the way. So what might that look like on our scale here that McGregor has put together for us? Forming stage. We might have to take a lot of leadership role in here. We may have to actually give the team a lot of direction during this forming stage. They don't really know what's going on, how they're going to work together. They've never worked with these people before. They don't really know how all this is going to go. They need a lot of information, help, guidance along the way. Storming, well, they're going to give us some information about what they would like changed, and we will change things the best that we can. We also have to make sure that, okay, this is my team, and these are the things we need to accomplish, and yes, I want to hear what you need, and here's some things as project manager that I'm going to need out of all of this as well. Then we get into the norming phase, and they're going to start taking over more of what goes on in the team. They're actually starting to work on this project and work on it well now. But we're still a project manager, and we need to make sure that they're not going down the wrong path somewhere. If they start to do that, we need to say, let's stop and take a look at this, see if this is actually the right direction. When they finally get into the performing phase, that's when we can pretty much turn things over to the team and just give them the support they need along the way. If we have a team that we have worked with a lot before, or maybe the team itself has worked a lot together, these stages of group development might be farther up on this end where they can do a lot of things themselves. As the team comes together, first there'll be a lot of individual work. As we start moving forward, now we start to get some communication patterns going on. We're still the central focus of things going on in the project at this point. And then we finally get all the communication channels built. We're working well together. The team is working well together, but they're still looking to us for a lot of the guidance along the way in the project. And then finally, we just become another team member along with everyone else, and there's equal sharing of responsibility, duties, expertise. The team's working really well together. It's all integrated well, and we just are helping all of that happen along the way. Again, when we get a team working well together, we've addressed all of our issues here of the meaningful purpose, common goals, the agreed upon approach. We're sharing our responsibility for the project, and the technical expertise is being used from everyone, our subject matter expertise, their skills, their abilities. And then they also have now developed into a group that can problem solve well together, they can work well together, make decisions together, resolve any conflicts that come up, address issues, be creative. They can do all the things we need to do as a team. And what are we doing that for? One thing. The only reason you need to have good teamwork in your project is not to make everybody's life wonderful. You're not trying to change everybody's life and give them a wonderful, happy life forever. What you're trying to do is get these people to work well enough on your project so that you get a successful project that provides the correct scope, meets the quality requirements, comes in on time, within budget, and you're going to do that in a way that takes good care of all the stakeholders along the way so that they want to work with you again and be involved in other projects with you, and the same thing with the team. You want the team to be together at the end of the project, working well together. They're sad to even leave this group and move on to something else, or you're going to disband the team and the individuals go off in separate directions, but you would like them to come back in that group or other groupings at some point to work on another project with you. Those are some of the key elements, overview of team leadership, and there are a number of references that you can take a look at and other courses you can take to follow up in depth on team leadership, a key element of success for project management. Thank you. Welcome to the lecture on working with difficult people. This is something every project manager has to do. Like it or not, we just seem to run into a difficult person now and then. There are ways to deal with these people, and we do not have to let this ruin our project at all. It might make our day a little bit tough once in a while, but it doesn't even have to ruin our whole day. Again, let's look at our project diamond here that talks about the technical side of things and the human dynamics side of things. We're on the human dynamics side of things over here. And we're going to run into difficult people in two areas. One will be our project team. Sometimes we have a difficult person on the project team that we have to work with. Sometimes we have difficult stakeholders we have to work with. First of all, we're going to talk about the team and working with some people on our team that may not be as easy to work with as we would hope. Again, remember that people come to our team based on their expertise. We're not thinking about, gee, does this person work well with others? Are they going to work well with me? No, they have the expertise to do this task and this task and this task. They're the experts on this part of the project. I need that expertise on my team. So I will figure out how to work the best with them. They're going to bring their interpersonal skills along the way. And let's take a look at an example of some of those interpersonal behaviors that we might see from time to time. What's on the radar we should be looking at? So dysfunctional behaviors are what we're going to take a look at first. What are things we watch for? One thing that might happen, and this can happen in teams or it can happen in the overall project. Some of these things will happen in a team setting when we're all together working around the table in some kind of a project team meeting, doing some teamwork together somehow all together in the same room, either physically or virtually. Sometimes we have somebody who just ignores others. They just simply think that they are the ones that know everything and that they don't even need to listen to anybody else, any other ideas. Some people just have a hard time focusing a lot of the time, and they get bored after a few seconds and just start talking to the person next to them. There's side conversations going on. Distracting behaviors. Sometimes people just have odd behaviors Like if you have a pen that clicks, sometimes that gets to be distracting for other people in the room. Sometimes people just looking around the room, getting up, walking all over the place, doing odd things with their at the table, like drawing. There's some people that just have to draw and pick at things and do things with their hands. That just can get in the way of other people in the project team. One of the distracting things that we find these days is technology. So in the team, well, we have somebody that during the team meeting, all of a sudden, they're just sitting there working on their phone. Well, they're one of the people that seems to be able to multitask on a lot of things, so they're actually listening to the team and what's going on, and they speak up appropriately and step in at the right times. But they're also trying to work on something else with somebody else down the hall at the same time, and they're talking back and forth on some other issue. Maybe they can do that. Maybe they can do that well, but now it's distracting the rest of the team. So that behavior may just get in the way of the team moving forward. Even though that person could actually be doing two things at once, it doesn't make any difference. It's getting in the way of the team moving forward as a group. Withdrawing and dominating, those two seem to go together, where somebody might start to dominate the team, where they just take over. They're the ones that start to talk. They're the ones that want to be in charge of everything. They're the ones that would really rather take over the team and not have you there. They just would rather be the project team manager. Well, when that starts to happen, if the project manager lets some of these people dominate and not let other people talk and get involved, well, those other people start to withdraw. So they just start to pull back from the team, and pretty soon they're sitting there, and now they're on their phones. They don't care what's going on. They're not involved in this. They've got somebody running the whole team, the whole meeting, all the team's work right now. They're not involved. These other people are not involved, so they don't care. They're withdrawn from the team. The worst example of withdrawing is when people just get up and leave the room. Okay, I've just had enough. Nothing's going on here that's productive. I have other things to do. I'm leaving. Don't let that happen in your team, and that is a default team methodology that seems to happen. If somebody starts to take things over and they're allowed to dominate the team, the other people start to withdraw, and you've seen that, I'm sure, in a number of teams. One of the teams that came together, they came together for a meeting, and it was a meeting on how they were going to implement a new policy that they had decided on at the last meeting. One of the people in this meeting now, it was the only person who was not in the previous meeting. So now we start to talk about implementing this policy that had been decided on in the previous meeting. This extra person now says, wait, I don't think we should even do that. I don't think that policy should be implemented. And they wouldn't let anybody start to talk about how to implement the policy, even though that's what this meeting was about, because they didn't get their say last meeting. They didn't get their say in the previous meeting because they chose not to be there. They just didn't think it was an important meeting and decided they weren't even going to bother to come to the thing. Well, now they come in here and want to completely change this meeting and completely take over the team and do something different. So the project manager said, we've already decided this. We're moving forward. This is a meeting about implementing this. So if they would have allowed that person to dominate the meeting like they wanted to, it would have completely changed the meeting, and they would have had the previous meeting all over again, where they're trying to figure out if they're going to even implement the policy. Stating opinion is fact. If we have ideas about things, that's great. It's okay to say, here's my idea. This is what I think about this. This is what I think about this idea that we're discussing. So our opinions are fine. Facts are fine. When we looked at this before, we found that 12 people did this, 97 people did this, and 472 people did it this way. Those are facts. We can gather some data about things and look at facts. What we have to be careful of is some people like to have their opinion stated as fact. I've been around here for the last 17 years, they might say. I know how it is here. This is the way things get done, just like this. So on our team, if we try to do anything different, it won't work. That's not a fact. That's their opinion. But they're stating it as a fact. So that's the thing we have to watch out for as well. These are just some of the things, some ideas of what you do as a project team leader. We have to watch for things that people do, and then when they're doing things that cause us and our team some problems, we step in and do something about that. So difficult people can cause you, the project manager, some problems, or they can cause your team some problems. We have to step in and do things about this. There's an intervention grid that we're going to take a look at. When people are doing things that are causing us problems, we're going to take a look at an intervention grid. When people are doing things that cause us problems or cause our team problems, they're being difficult to work with us, with the team, with other people on the team. Sometimes we need to step in and do something about this. This intervention grid is based on some work done by Peter Schultes in his breakthrough book called The Team Handbook. It says that there are two things that we can do. If we are all working together, this is any team setting where everybody's working together on something, we have a team meeting, we're all working together on some issue, some aspect of the project, some task that we have to work through, some decision we have to make. One thing we can do as the project manager is step in and disrupt the meeting. What that means is we can't work on the task side of things right now on our teamwork diamond that we've been looking at. The task can't proceed because somebody's being difficult. They're keeping the thing from moving forward. We need to stop the meeting and step over to the human dynamics side of things and deal with this person, deal with this behavior that's going on that's causing us problems. The other thing is we can confront the individual that's doing something that is making it difficult to work with them. So we have these two elements, confrontation and disruption. So what do we do with this? The first thing we do is a low-level intervention of some kind. Let's say we have someone who is constantly interrupting everybody else as they start to speak. Won't let anybody else talk about any ideas at all. What's one thing we can do? We can use some tools like brainstorming. Say, wait a second, let's stop this discussion for a moment. I think what we need to do now is to use brainstorming. And in brainstorming, we just let everybody have an idea. We let everybody bring their ideas out. And we'll put those down up in front of the group on a whiteboard or on a flip chart someplace, a whiteboard or an easel. Might even put it up on a screen if we're using some kind of electronic meeting that we're doing. We put this up for everybody to see. And everyone gets to say their idea. We can actually go around and ask each person for their idea, their opinion. That way we haven't really confronted anybody and we haven't really disrupted the meeting. We just say we're going to use a different tool here. This open discussion is not working, so let's do something different. Now we'll maybe go to another level, the second level. Say, you know, that didn't really work. That person is still jumping in and interrupting everybody. As soon as anybody tries to bring their idea out, they step in and start to talk. So now what can we do? We can completely stop the meeting and say we have some ground rules about how we're going to work together. One person speaks at a time, and we let everybody finish their idea before we step in and add our comments to that. So we're going to start to observe that ground rule. You haven't confronted the person that's doing this interrupting, but you have stopped the meeting. You just quit the meeting completely and have gone over to the human dynamics side of things and started to deal with that part of your team. Next thing, 3. Our third level of intervention is confronting the person. Okay, they're still interrupting everybody. I don't know what's wrong with this person. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to have to actually talk to them directly. You're going to do that outside of the group. So you're not going to stop the meeting and talk to them right now. You're going to talk to them outside the group. So you might take a break. If you have to just talk to them right now, take a break, say, wait a second, I just need to talk with you for a moment, and let's step over here by ourselves and talk a little. Or you may wait till after the meeting, said, I'd like to talk with you right now, or I need to set up a time with you before the next meeting so we can talk. The fourth level that we would ever use is stopping the meeting and talking to this person right in front of the entire group. This level, we really need to never use. We can deal with 99.9% of all of the dysfunctional, disruptive things that people do. We can deal with those in one of these other areas before we have to actually confront these people and talk to them in front of everybody else. When it's number 3 and you have to talk to an individual, okay, you're doing something that is causing a lot of difficulties for me and for our project team. How do we do that? What words do we put together to say that? There's a model we can use. There's a 7-step feedback model. And this is what we're going to do when we have to talk to somebody, when they're doing something that is causing us some difficulties, causing our team some difficulties. This is just a difficult person, and we need to talk to them face to face about what they're doing and try and change that. First thing, when you. What we're going to do is talk about the thing that they're doing that is difficult. It's causing difficulties for you or somebody on your team or your whole team. So this is the thing that's happening. This is the action that we want to change somehow. When you, I feel, and this is the feeling that you have. You're confused, you're angry, there's something that is going on. And a lot of times this is what even gets this whole feedback thing started. Why is this person difficult for you? You have some kind of a gut feeling here. This person's really difficult to deal with. And you know, they're really making me very angry here. Or they're really confusing me. They're difficult because I don't understand what in the world they're doing. I don't get this at all. So I feel something about this. Because. So explain this to the person. Why is this thing causing this difficulty? You may pause here to let them respond, or we may, if it's something that you really need to say all of the other pieces first, you don't need to stop here. You can let them speak a little bit later. What I would like is, you want a different behavior. This behavior is causing some difficulty, and you want to change it to a new behavior. So you can say, the new behavior I would like is this. Because, what do you think about that? Let's say we have two friends. One of them is called DJ. And DJ is a big guy. He's a big kind of mountain man. Great big red hair, big red beard. He's hiked all over the mountains, ridden his bicycle on all the mountain trails. You know, he spends a lot of time in the mountains. He does have a job down in the city, 8 to 5, but every minute he could possibly get, he's off in the mountains. All of his vacation, his weekends, his evenings, everything, out in the mountains. Good, strong, big human. Very soft-spoken, very nice, very kind, very gentle. He has another friend, his other friend, Tom. Tom is a little more high-strung, and Tom likes to move fast. DJ is kind of, you know, very thoughtful, quiet, soft-spoken, speaks kind of slowly. Tom doesn't speak slowly, speaks fast, and he likes to get ideas out, thoughts out, words out, and go on to the next thing. They're very good friends. One day they're sitting talking, and DJ is starting to talk, and Tom just can't stand it and does the thing that Tom does very often. Steps in halfway through what DJ has to say, and so DJ, you mean this, 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 this? Okay, great. Now, I need to say something, because Tom is always thinking about what he wants to say rather than listening to what DJ has to say. He just gets bored listening to DJ talk so slow. So DJ has finally had enough this one day and starts to stand up and lean over the table towards Tom. And Tom's going, oh, I wonder what this is all about. This doesn't look all that good. And so when DJ stands up, starts getting even bigger than he usually is and start to puff up kind of big and says, Tom, when you interrupt me and finish my sentences for me, that really hurts my feelings. Because I don't think you care at all about what I have to say, and all you can do is think about the next thing you have to say. What I would like for you to do is to let me finish my thoughts, let me finish my sentences, get them out, then you certainly can talk, because that's going to allow us to remain friends and for you not to get hurt right now. What do you think about that? Tom says, that's a great idea. And Tom never interrupted DJ again. Went right through this little model. You can also use this model for positive things. You have somebody on your project team that is really good at listening to what's going on in the group, and sometimes they can summarize that for the whole group, and they can really clarify what's going on. So you can say, Patty, when you actually listen to the group, You do such a great job at that. When you actually summarize things and clarify all of that for us. I feel really relieved because you have really helped our team come together and move forward. What I would like is for you to keep doing that, and I would like to actually make that kind of a formal role in the project for us. So there'll be certain times when I'd like you to just speak up, and I'll actually even ask you at certain times, now, Patty, can you give us a little summary of our discussion that we've had going on, and can you clarify what everyone said? Because that's really going to allow our team to work well together and move forward. Will that be okay with you? I said, sure, I can help with that. No problem at all. So you can use this for dealing with some very difficult people. You can also use the same model for people who are working pretty well. Let's take a look at our stakeholders. Stakeholders can cause us problems along the way as well. We have our stakeholder analysis that we looked at before. Let's take a look at some homeowners around a stadium. We're putting in a new stadium, a campus, and a new sports stadium, sports facility here, the playing field. And there are homeowners that live around here, and we put them on our list. These two parts are going to be involved in the task side of things that you've worked with and figuring out their power and interest that they have in this project. So that's all part of what you do on the task side of things. There's one other part out here at the end that says potential strategies. Oh, now how are we going to gain support from these people and reduce obstacles that they may put up in front of us? How do we actually start to avoid any difficult issues that come up from these people instead of waiting until they are difficult and then trying to work with it? Can we prevent any of this? So what can we do? We just have a list of things that people could do that will help us work together well with them. People around the stadium, one thing we might do, provide them a lot of information. Let them know what's going on. If there's going to be street closures because we're putting in this new stadium, let them know that. Give them some alternative routes they can get in and out of their houses. During game days, there's going to be a lot of traffic, and sometimes the streets will be so blocked up they can't get in and out of their house. They live near the stadium. Well, they should have thought of that when they bought their house there, but you know, we don't want to make sure now that we've got more people coming because we're going to fix up this stadium, put this new facility in. You know, there's going to be a lot more traffic driven and foot traffic through the yards, right through their lawns that they never had before. So there's some things that could cause problems. Some of these people, if we don't work with them up front and prevent the difficulties, they can start to cause us difficulties because now someone in this group or a few people in this group decide they're going to come together in the homeowners associations or get together and form some kind of a homeowners group, and then they're going to go to the chancellor of the university and start to cause problems. They're going to go to the city and say, okay, we want you to get involved because this new construction is causing us problems. So now we've got all kinds of troubles underway that we should have never had in the first place if we would have worked well with people. One thing we could do for these people, we might say, you know, to keep them from being difficult, maybe we just give every household around here 2 free tickets to every sporting event that happens. So now we're saying, well, we've got 2 free tickets to all these things. That doesn't sound so bad. Maybe what we can do is allow them to park cars in their yard. Near this facility, there's one very nice little old lady, Janie, and she parks cars in her yard. She's very happy to have any kind of sporting event going on. She'd be happy if there was something going on every single weekend. So if they expanded this facility to include all kinds of other events, she'd be happy with that, because in her yard she can park 100 cars, and she charges everyone $20 US to park in that yard of hers. So she makes $2,000 every time there's a sporting event. So she's happy to have this stadium expanded and even more sporting events. So if we can find ways to work well with people up front, we don't have to then try and figure out, okay, now we've got a problem with this person, how do we deal with it? Let's just alleviate the problems, not even have them there to begin with. So one of the things we can do is our stakeholder analysis. Let's try and prevent problems along the way. Another thing we can do with our stakeholders, use the tools. We have a project charter. We have a scope statement. We have a work breakdown structure. We have a schedule. We have resource assignments along the way. The project charter, what does that tell us? That tells us what done looks like. The scope, what does that tell us? It tells us what done looks like. Those two things together are going to give us a lot of information on the end result of the project. One of the key issues that causes some kind of problems in the project and causes people to be very difficult is because no one is clear about done looks like this, or at least this person's not clear about that, and they may not agree with us. First, we have to hear each other, understand each other, and then for a project, we have to come to some kind of agreement. We all need to be working toward the same goal. So a lot of the things that people do that are difficult are based on we haven't made sure that everyone agrees on things. Let's do that up front. So if we use our tools properly in the project, well, again, we can take care of some of the problems. Now, if we run into problems along the way and people say, give us some trouble about the scope of the project, say, you know, we need to add more into the scope of the project. We can say, well, that's not what we agreed to. Here's what we agreed to, and all we do is pull out the charter, the scope statement, and say, when you were in this meeting, we had this discussion, we all agreed to this. So all we have to do is remind people of the discussion that we had before. If they're trying to be difficult now, we can say, we did this before, agreed to this, we should be able to move forward. What we're looking at is the scope of the project. That's one area that can cause a lot of problems. So people can be very difficult about the scope of the project, especially as the project starts to move forward. A lot of times we'll have a discussion about the project up front, and then as we move forward, people can actually see the project come together, and now they start to cause some difficulties because now they can actually see it. Up front originally, the project manager could envision this whole completed project in their head. It's one of the skills that you develop as a project manager. You get better at that the more projects you do. You're looking out ahead to say, okay, done looks like this, and I'm moving toward that. And the way I'm going to do that is put a project plan together, these steps, this WBS, this schedule, these people. I'm going to put all that together to make that happen. One area of a problem area where people can be very difficult is that scope. As we start doing the project, people see things happen, and that's when they can find, wait a minute, I didn't want it to look like that. When I said those words, I thought it was going to look like this. I thought it was going to be a big square yellow one. I didn't know it was going to be a great big round blue one. I didn't mean that at all. So now we're going, oh no, we have to go back and clarify what we agreed on originally. Sometimes we do have to go back and re-clarify things. Sometimes all we have to do is say, wait, we had this discussion already and we agreed on the round blue one. We did not agree on the square yellow one, even though we talked about that. So if you recall, we had that discussion and decided that was not the direction we were going to go. And then people say, oh, I do remember that, and they can stop being difficult. Sometimes we actually need to change the scope of the project. If we change the scope of the project, then people might be difficult again because they say, well, but I don't want it to cost any more money or take any more time. Well, it may have to do one of those things. The work breakdown structure is a tool we can use to focus people on how we're going to do things. When we look at the scope of the project, the quality of the project, we can lay out, when we lay out the scope, we can put a quality requirement on every single task. So here's the scope of the project, total scope of the project, all of the deliverables, everything that will be created and supplied by this project, and all of the work we have to do to make that happen. People can be difficult around a couple of these things. They can be difficult about the deliverables. Wait a minute, I didn't agree to that one and I want 3 different ones instead. They want to change the scope of the project for what we're actually going to supply at the end, the product scope of the project. Then they can also say, well, I don't think it should take that long and cost that much money. And we say, well, it has to take that long and cost that much money. When we put it together, the experts say we have to do these tasks. Every time we have to do a task, we have to pay somebody to do that and supply them with some materials quite often to add that cost into that task as well. And it takes some time to do each one of these tasks. So we have to put the time and the dollars into the project to make it successful. We put our schedule together. This is another area that can cause problems. So now people get difficult about the schedule. Okay, it's just taking too long, don't want it to take that long, want it to go shorter. Well, we've laid the schedule out with our experts and we can show people we have these tools to take care of some of these difficult issues that arise. Just go back to the tools that you have and say, okay, this is what we decided for scope of the project, this is what we decided on the schedule for the project, and this is based on the best experts that we could put together to say it's going to take this long. If people want it to be done shorter, we'll have to figure out how to do that, which might mean take things out of the scope of the project, reduce the quality of the project. We might have to add more people to the project so that we can get each task done faster, and that may increase the cost of the project. Sometimes we can use any of these tools. Sometimes a better tool to show people what's going on with the project schedule might be our Gantt chart. So we have all these tools already that we've put together. This tool, when we look at our network diagram, it says here's what the project schedule looks like. When people say, I want to add in extra elements into the scope of the project, what are they asking you to do? They're asking you to put additional work into the project. So what can you do now is say, I can do that. That's not a problem if we agree to that. And all of the key stakeholders say, yes, we do need to add that element into the project. Okay, we've gotten rid of that difficulty. Now it causes more difficulties. Because now people say, wonderful, I'm glad that's in the scope of the project and we're also going to do that. However, I don't want it to take any more time or cost any more money. You can look at this diagram right here and see, you just added something into the scope of the project. That means it has to cost more money. We have to pay somebody to do that task, and they have to take the time to do that task, and we have to supply them the materials they need to complete that task. So it's certainly going to cost more money, and you know if that task is in the critical path, it will take longer to get the project done. If we have some float time, and this new task is not going to use up all of that float time that we've talked about before in scheduling, then it doesn't necessarily have to take any longer. But certainly it's going to cost more money. So now we have some tools to show people that. It's not just, well, you want more things in the scope? Well, it's going to cost you more money. What are you going to show them? Don't just say it's going to cost you more money, you have to pay more. That's going to make people angry a lot of the time. I don't think I should have to pay more. We're just going to put this thing in here. It's one little thing. I don't know what the big deal is. Let me show you what that means. This is what it means to the project. It has to go in here, and somehow we have to pay somebody to do this. It's going to cost some money, and it's going to take some time. Sometimes we're going to have some difficulties because some of our stakeholders just don't like the people that we put on the project. A way to take care of that, one of two things. One, we can say, this is the right person to be on the project. We have looked at all the people that can work on this project and do this thing, that are available during the time frame we need this, and are willing to do this, to do this actual task. They want to work on this project. They're available during the time we need it done. The three things we need to effectively put people on the project, recall, we have to have somebody who can do the project or do this task, who will do this task, and somebody who's available during the time frame we need the task done. So if somebody says, I don't like that person there, I don't want that person doing this, then we have to step back and say, we think it's the right person because of these three things. They're the right person with the skills, they want to work on this, and they're available during the time we need them. Then if this difficult person still says, you know what, and they have enough power on the project to make these things happen, they say, you know what, I don't want that person doing it, I don't care what, get somebody different. Sometimes we may just have to put a different person on there. There's a number of different places where we're going to run into difficulties with stakeholders. Each and every one of them, we can go back and rely on our tools, and then if that doesn't work, what is it that's going to make this person satisfied on our project now? And this one, we just put somebody new on the task. There's some other ways to do this, and this gets into the persuasion and influence area. And a lot of this is based on a nice video you might want to look at sometime on YouTube called The Science of Persuasion. There are 6 different areas that we can work with when we run into difficulties with people. We want to get past this, we want to work together with them, we want to come to some agreement on what we do next. One is reciprocity, one is scarcity, one is authority, one is consistency, one is liking, and one is consensus. Let's take a look at reciprocity. What does that mean? It means that other people that we're working with are more likely to work with us in a positive way instead of a difficult way if we've already done something for them first that has been good for them and beneficial for them. So like our homeowners, if we're working with them and we give them free tickets to all of these events at the stadium, and we work with the city to allow people to park cars in their yard on sporting event days, so any city ordinance against that is not in effect during any day when sporting events are going on, we've already done some nice things for them. Now when we go to them and say, and you know what we need to do is we need to close your street off for 3 days next week to allow us to do some work on the stadium, and here's how we can get you in and out of your house for those 3 days. That could be a difficult situation, but if we've already done something that these people appreciate and we've done something to help them out, they're a lot more likely to work with us and say, well, you know, I don't like that, having my street closed for 3 days, but I can work with you on this. There's another one, scarcity. Sometimes in our project, people just don't like the way we're doing things, they don't like the approach we're taking, they don't like the people that are on the team and the way that the team is working with things. A lot of times, all we need to do is explain to them why this is beneficial to them. Out of all the ways we could do this, we've come up with this. We think that we are the only team that could actually do this. You can't find a better team. This is the best team to do this thing. We're unique. And if you bring somebody else in to do it instead of us, you want to have me replace this entire team, put different people on here, or half this team, or do a different approach, what we're going to lose are these things. You actually stand to lose some things, which might be time and money, our cost and time on our project, because we put together the best team we possibly can think of, and this group has come up with the best way to do this project, which is the fastest way to do it and the most cost-effective way to do it. So if these people want to change things, we need to explain, okay, we're the ones that can do it, and here's what you can lose if we don't do it this way. Authority is another thing. You need to be perceived as an authority. If you're perceived as an authority, then people are more likely to work with you well. If you're not perceived as an authority, then it might be difficult for people to work with you. There's one project manager who has gone into a company now. They worked in another company, and they did an outstanding job in their company. They were one of the leaders in their company. They did a great job at everything that they did. They ran projects like they got hired to do in the new company. But in the new company, now they're here in this new company, they don't know exactly all the ways that this company does things. So they're an authority on these kinds of projects. They can come in here, they wouldn't have to listen to anybody. They could take over one of these projects, do the project beginning to end without having to get any guidance, direction, anything from anybody. However, the new company likes to do things their own way. So now this person is not perceived as an authority in the new company. They're perceived as somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing because they don't understand the way that the company does things. They are an authority, just not perceived that way. So if you're perceived as an authority, people are a lot more likely to work with you and a lot more likely to not cause you any difficulties along the way. Consistency can help you avoid difficulties. And sometimes consistency can be a way to deal with difficulties that do arise. We're talking about consistency in the way that we approach projects. This is how we approach projects. We do things this way. We always do things this way in our projects. We're being consistent with that. So we're being consistent with how we're doing things in the organization. We have processes in place that we use to get things done. And if somebody wants us to do something different and special, we have to look at that process and say, this is the process, this is how it goes, and what you want us to do will happen at this point along the way. It's just not going to happen yet. Or that really is not something that we do. We typically don't approach it that way. And maybe we could change things a little bit and adapt to what somebody needs. We need some consistency on how we all work together, on how we work together with stakeholders, how the project moves forward, how we work together in the organization. We need consistency for that, and a lot of times we have processes in place to help us do those things. If we don't have processes in place, we can run into all kinds of problems. That person who's the authority from another company has come to the new company wants things done their way. The problem is there's no consistency. They have no processes in place to say, this is how we do things around here. So it causes problems with the stakeholders. The stakeholders are always wondering what's going on, why things are taking this long, why we do it that way one time, why we do it another way another time. We're trying to work with you along the way, the stakeholders say, and we can't figure it out, what's going on with you over there. This project manager is having all kinds of problems with people inside the company, with all kinds of stakeholders outside the company, because there's no processes in place to make things consistent across the whole organization. Every time a new project starts, what consistency means is whatever high-level executive is interested in this project, that's the way it gets done. So now you have a different high-level executive on the second project. Well, this second project gets done in a completely different way because that's the way this person wants it done. Fortunately, this organization just got a new CEO and has come in and said, okay, we need consistency across the organization, and we're going to put processes in place that everyone will go by. Now they're putting those processes in place, and the first couple of projects they've piloted some of these things on have gone very well. The team has worked well together. Haven't been any difficulties with team members along the way. And now this project manager who's piloting a couple of these new processes is also having great success with the stakeholders, and there's not so many difficulties with the stakeholders along the way. So just get some processes in place that help take care of things along the way. Again, alleviate problems that come along the way. And if we have a process in place and somebody wants us to do something different, all we have to do is say, okay, here's how the process works to provide what we usually do, but you want something different, here's how we can change the process. At least we have a place to start. It's not just, well, we want something different than that, do what you can, and we go try and figure out the best thing we possibly can. To do that, we have a process to look at, and how do we need to adjust that to get different outcomes. Liking. People are just going to work with us better, and we're going to have less difficulties if they like us. So, and that doesn't mean that we have to be their best friend. It just means that somehow we have to find some common ground, some things that we actually agree with. There are some cultures in the world that before you can do business, you have to actually sit down and talk with people, figure out who they are, who you are. Can we actually work together? Let's get a little of an idea of how you work together with others, what you're all about, so we can figure out, okay, is this somebody I can actually work with and get along with and come to some successful results with? If we work on a project and we have somebody that's being very difficult with us, sometimes we can try and find some personal common ground along the way that at least gives us some place that we agree on something, and we can start to build that area of agreement. Difficulties are based a lot of times just on somebody has one idea, somebody has another idea, and they're just not coming together at all. If we can find any area of agreement, either personally or sometimes in this professional area, and say, oh, you know, yes, I do start to understand how you look at things. And I've looked at things that way a little bit myself before. I can understand what's going on now. Let's start to expand out from there, come to a larger area of agreement. Consensus. Consensus now starts to build on all of these other elements that we put together. We all need to agree, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. Consensus up front in the project and on every element throughout the project can avoid some of the difficulties, and when we arrive at a place where we do have some difficulty with someone, there is some sort of conflict along the way. We're not agreeing on things, we're not working well together. Some difficulties happened here. A lot of times we can sit down and talk with each other and try and find that area of agreement and expand that out into something that is acceptable to both of us, where we say, okay, that looks like a perfectly good way to do this, let's proceed together with that. So again, we've come up with done looks like this, we both agree on that, and how are we going to go about making that happen. In summary, if we listen to people, listen to all our team members and our stakeholders, actually understand what they're talking about, and we treat everyone with respect along the way, we have a good solid foundation for working with difficult people.